it was a long journey, and to be told that we don't know, or we're not sure, or to get placed on the back burner, it was extremely difficult. And I had to learn to advocate for myself and to advocate for my own health. I was 23 when I first got sick. She was only 22. You fast forward a year of sitting in doctors' offices and having so many heartbreaks and ups and downs. I just told her, I'm like, you gotta go. You should leave. You don't deserve this. We don't deserve this. We're kids. That I'm a family man. I am fanatical about personal growth and maximizing my humanly potential. I fortunately understand that my time here is limited and it's not guaranteed. And so I'm somebody who tries to make the most out of every moment, every interaction, every day. And so I try to win the day. And eventually, if I'm blessed with more time, eventually those days turn into weeks that I've won, and hopefully months. And I try to create as much momentum positively as I possibly can. And another thing is that I am a husband. My wife is her name is Shelby, and we have been together since December of 2012. Married for 6 years. 6 years. That's right, 6 years. And then we've got three amazing boys. We have twins that are 5, and then we have a 7-year-old as well. So she's a boy mom, boy dad. It's never a dull moment around here. They keep us on our toes. We always tell people we're playing zone defense. So it's very interesting around our family's household.
On that note of being with Shelby, you met in December of 2012, or you've been together since December of 2012. You were only together for 6 months and then boom, it was like a new life. Could you just sort of summarize, even before cancer, back in 2013, you were already very familiar with going to the doctor and going through treatment, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, we had only been together for 6 months. And then one night I had some symptoms that drove us to the hospital. Had to show some humility and ask my girlfriend at the time to take me to the hospital because I wasn't feeling well. And throughout a series of tests and CT scans, the doctors found that I had an enlarged prostate, but also an enlarged heart, that they claimed was an athlete's heart at that time, which can be common in young African American men. But this was something they were pretty serious about. They told me not to play any more basketball, not to cease physical activity, and to go see my doctor as soon as I made it back home to Cincinnati. And so as soon as I got back into town after that weekend, my visits with the doctor began, and they became more and more prevalent. And she accompanied me through a lot of those appointments for the next 13 months.
Wow. I know it was a path, a long path to even figure out what was going on, which I know can be really difficult for people. Can you highlight the feelings of, I know something's not right, and yet I can't get any answers to what's causing all this?
Yeah, there was a lot of confusion. I'd say a lot of anger as well, some sadness. So over the course of 13 months, I lost about 49 pounds. I had 3 different biopsies, 2 different bone marrow biopsies. I had all types of ailments and infections or illnesses along the way that caused me pretty uncomfortable pains. And it was a long journey. And to be told that we don't know, or we're not sure, or to get placed on the back burner, it was extremely difficult. And I had to learn to advocate for myself and to advocate for my own health. I had to call a lot of doctors back. I had to schedule a lot of tests. I had to call and inquire on a lot of different results and blood work and make sure that that blood work and those results or those scans were picked up by me and taken to another doctor, which when you're going through it, you feel like I shouldn't have to do this. I'm the victim here. I'm the patient. Yet that mentality doesn't get you very far in this game, and unfortunately, it can lead to it can lead to death, or even way worsening of your symptoms or illness that you currently have. So intuitively, I knew that I needed to advocate for myself, but without Shelby and without my mom and my dad and having some great support around me, I don't know that I would have continued to seek the help that eventually got me to the Mayo Clinic.
Right. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is you knew intuitively, I have to keep advocating for myself because this is my life. I know something's wrong. At the same time, it's easy enough to say that, but without support and a support system, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it's draining to have to continue to move forward when you're having to advocate so much. So you had that support to keep you going, right? So it's what I'm hearing is it's important to have people around you, that support circle, will help you push forward when you might feel like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
It's crucial, and I even tried to push Shelby, my girlfriend at the time, away because we were so young. I was 23 when I first got sick. She was only 22. You fast forward a year of sitting in doctors' offices and having so many heartbreaks and ups and downs. I just told her, I'm like, you gotta go. You should leave. You don't deserve this. We don't deserve this. We're kids. Um, neither of us, because I don't enjoy sitting in these doctor offices or appointments or waiting rooms, and I know that you don't, and I know that you can't. And that was never even an option for her. She never even thought twice about it. Like she told my aunt, she's like, that's my man, and she stuck beside me. My aunt even asked her at one point, like, why are you still with him as he's going through all this? And she's like, that because he's my man. And so she really stuck beside me throughout all of it.
I want to summarize. You were eventually able to finally, after going to the local hospital with testing, they were like, it might be lymphoma. There was swollen lymph nodes. And it got to the point where it was enough signaling of, hey, something really is happening. So you went to the Mayo Clinic, which is, very known for being a huge institution for research and all these things. You ended up going through a heart surgery, a bone marrow biopsy. You had full body plasma transfusions. All that led up to finally what happened? What did you hear?
Yeah, so I got to the Mayo Clinic, and I'm very fortunate that I got in because I also, throughout my journey, I understand that a lot of people will try to get in with whatever illness that they may have, and not everybody is accepted. So I feel very fortunate to have been accepted into the clinic, especially when I was, because I was at we were pretty much at a dead end and didn't have any answers, and nobody wanted to treat me for a partial diagnosis of an unnamed type of lymphoma. And so when I got there and I had all of the tests and all of the procedures done that you just mentioned, it took about 2 weeks, and then I finally got a diagnosis of IgG4RD. So IgG4RD, and then they called it a pseudo lymphoma, because they started diagnosing this disease in around 1998. I believe my oncologist told me. So very, very rare and new. I believe he only had one other patient other than me at the time that he had ever seen this in, and I was the youngest patient he had ever had, especially with it in their heart, and then also manifesting in the lymphatic system as well. So it really threw them for a loop. So it wasn't technically a lymphoma, but they treated it as a lymphoma. So they put me on a rituximab procedure, and then also along with high doses of steroids to treat it in the same way that they would maybe sometimes a low-grade lymphoma. The lymph nodes in my neck were massive and referred to them almost like as golf balls on both sides. And so when I returned to Cincinnati, Ohio, I began going to chemotherapy at the age of 24 in August 2014, every week for a month to get this medicine, get it working.
So at this point, I know it happened very quickly for you, Nick. Like, you're at the Mayo Clinic just to even get a diagnosis. I guess how did that feel? It had been 13 months.
Yeah, so it was extremely relieving, and I think, as I mentioned to you in a little bit of a conversation before, when I came out of my heart surgery, I was surrounded by doctors of different nationalities. I want to say there was 8 to 10 people in the room, and everyone kept apologizing and saying, "I'm sorry," but they let me know right away that you're the interesting case. And you may never want to be the interesting case, but we're here for you, and we're all going to be looking at your case moving forward. And so to fast forward a couple weeks and to even have a diagnosis was a relief. Now, it didn't feel great to tell me that, it was almost like the chances of hitting the lottery or, you should go buy some scratch offs. At the end of the day, I was just fortunate and I was grateful to have an answer so that I could at least begin taking some action because every doctor appointment that I left prior to that, I left with question marks of the unknown. And honestly, with the way that I was headed and the way that my body was deteriorating, I had I had really come to grips with and thought that I wasn't going to make it much longer. And then also being asked by so many others that care about you, and then for you to have to articulate, well, I don't know. And then people want to know, people that care about you, well, why don't you know? What don't they know? And so it was extremely frustrating, but also I would say mainly the feelings of hopelessness and despair started to set in. At first you've still got some energy, and I'd say you're still pretty hopeful. But as you continue to have doors shut and people tell you, "Hey, we don't know," and you're talking about your life, and then you're also on the other side physically deteriorating away. And every time you go to the doctor, you weigh less, or you've got something else coming up. It was, and I think maybe subconsciously that's why I had asked Shelby to maybe leave as well because I didn't feel great about what the future held as you know, if I were to stay on the same trajectory that I was when I was going through all of these doctor's visits for 13 months. So quite sad and very scary, to be honest. Scary because as a young man, I think as most young people in general, I felt um, invincible, almost like indestructible. I had never really thought about my own mortality. I had never really thought I'd have to face that at such a young age, and no one really prepares you for that. And so I dealt with it in the best way that I possibly could. And there was definitely some unhealthy ways of numbing, trying to compartmentalize, and so utilizing some of the medication that I was given or drinking excessively to try to push those feelings down so that I wouldn't have to deal with them because it was just extremely scary. And I wasn't sure how to talk about it and I wasn't sure who to talk to. So a lot of hopelessness.
So, on that note, you had felt invincible. I know that it was really hard. Hope left with every doctor's visit. At any of the doctor's visits, did you also feel like people didn't believe you? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. So there was one specific doctor that I went to. It was an infectious disease doctor. I actually will never forget this. I was actually thinking about it this morning, wondering if this would come up. So I actually I drove a work vehicle way out of my territory where I was supposed to be for the day to downtown UC, so University of Cincinnati's campus. And my mom and my dad met me there actually because at this point I had lost a lot of weight. I had a lot of different symptoms. I'd been to many different doctor's appointments that had no answers. So we had been referred to an infectious disease doctor. And at this infectious disease doctor, I want to say he took almost 30 vials of blood to test for all types of different. It was the most that I've ever had taken, just for testing. But at this point, we're all just like anything that you can tell us, please let us know. And so we were very hopeful going into that, maybe that this infectious disease doctor would be able to tell us what was going on with me. Why was I having all of these symptoms, the night sweats, the weight loss, the fatigue, and gave him the blood, gave him the symptoms, never heard anything back. And so the advocating for myself came into play. And I called in twice. After calling in twice, and I'm saying over the course of a couple weeks calling in multiple different times, was finally able to get a return where the I want to say his partner, his physician's assistant, reached back out to me and told me that the doctor had thought that I had breathed in some sort of bacterial compound from the ground. They were doing a new driveway and putting in some new parking in the neighborhood that I lived in at the time. And so we told him there was some excavation going on, and his response to all of the stuff that they had taken from me was, "Oh, well, he's breathed in more than likely some sort of spores or bacterial infection that he's inherited from, or that he's gotten from the excavation that's happening around the house. If you continue to keep him on, the Benadryl and some over-the-counter medicine and some antibiotics, he should be good to go." And that was really frustrating to me because once I had never had anybody take so much from me. There's a lot of time that went in between there. Then also no call, no follow up. So a lot of that hopefulness, and this is where that hopelessness kind of started to come in. And really after this appointment, because this was like my last ditch effort after seeing oncologists and all types of different doctors before, and not having anything. And so this to me almost said like, oh, this doctor doesn't actually think I'm going through some of the things that I'm going through. It almost felt like it was, just pick something out of a hat and tell him this is what it is. And so I was pretty frustrated. And I remember asking my oncologist my oncologist at the Mayo Clinic months later, what if I would have listened to that person? What if I would have listened and stopped there and gave up because that's what I chose to listen to? It just didn't sit well with me. And as we've mentioned many times before, you have to continue to press on. If you don't feel a certain way, if you know that there's something else going on with you, you got to continue to search for answers. And that's where your support system can come into, play majorly, because you may be, out of energy. You may be exhausted. And that's where you've got to be able to lean on your support system to help you to make sense of everything that's going on in your world right then.
And what did the Mayo Clinic oncologist say to you when you said, "What if I had listened?"
Yeah. Well, so that was my biggest question. What would I have done if I would have listened to this doctor? And then also, what do people do that don't have health insurance? Because I knew that it cost me a lot to get there, and I had great insurance through the company that I had worked for. The answer, yeah, I believe is that you wouldn't be here. You would have more than likely died, or people that inherit this autoimmune disease in the past that have gotten this, more likely than not have not had the means of going through all of the different doctors and all of the oncology specialists and hematology specialists and getting all of the PET scans and the CT scans to actually identify what it is that they're dealing with. So felt very fortunate, but also very sad because I'm like, man, I can't be the only one. I know that the odds look like that on paper here today, but I know there's got to be other cases out there. We just don't know.
Right, right. Um, so you really fought for, the diagnosis. You were able to get treatment done. If you were to just summarize again, you started to get the rituximab and some steroids is every 2 months, then it would get a little bit further apart, right? Every 8 weeks,
Yes.
and this happened for a few years.
Yes.
Eventually, it got to once every 9 months or so. And how long did that go for?
Yeah. So from August of 2014 all the way until I would say my last treatment would have been around September 20, 20, 2020. Actually, not September 2020. It would have been earlier. It would have been like December 2019 would have been like my last one. So in between there, because treatments became fewer and far between, I got a port put in originally in August of 2014 for my autoimmune disease and for going to chemotherapy. And then as we got to a point where, I was only going, twice a year or so, my oncologist at the Mayo Clinic he was more than on board with me getting my port removed. And to me, that was more of a mental victory because it didn't cause me any physical pain or issues, but it was that reminder of having this thing that I have to go get flushed regularly. And I'm like, not even coming in here that often anymore. I'm like, maybe we could get it out. I could get a little mental victory for once. And they're like, absolutely. And so got the port taken out. But yeah, I went to chemotherapy and worked, and I throughout my whole career pretty much from August 2014 all the way up until
December 2019.
December
Yeah,
December
December
2019.
2019. And then, as we know, then the world shut down a few months
Yes.
later.
Yep.
And that impacted you too. And in fact, you
Yes.
said then the treatment really completely stopped for a while because there was COVID, there were all these protocols, there was a lot of question marks. How did you feel, I guess, during that time when you were being told, like, okay, well, we can't really do the usual anymore right now? And there was all this COVID confusion.
Yeah. So there was a lot of confusion around how am I going to get to the clinic? Is it safe to get to the clinic? And I say the clinic to the Mayo Clinic, and um, flights weren't very prevalent at the time, and so I had was supposed to get chemotherapy at a 9 month mark, and wasn't able to work that out between insurance and logistics and everything, and so I actually ended up going about a year without chemotherapy. So no tests, no scan during that time. And during that time, I felt pretty good. I felt like I'd say I felt relatively healthy. And all in all, I during that time I took more ownership than I ever had in the past. In the past, I really just was kind of just following all of my doctor's orders and doing the bare minimum, if I'm being honest, doing what they told me to do. So if they told me to be a chemo on this time, this date, that's what I did. I showed up that time, that date. And then outside of that, I didn't do anything in my own power to put more distance between myself and my autoimmune disease, put more distance between myself and heart disease. But I had this like what I call a wake up call. What I believe, the universe is kind of preparing me for the journey that I had ahead. And so in August of 2020, started working out more. I started to really prioritize my holistic health, focusing on physically improving, mentally improving, emotionally improving, and spiritually improving. And so during this time, I'm feeling good. I lost some weight, some excess weight that I had put on from years of taking steroids and eating whatever I wanted. Probably that stems from all of those years of being really skinny and losing a lot. I just started eating whatever I wanted, and then really ballooned for a while. So this was the first time where I was like, I'm taking control and I feel good. And in the background, I would say around, it was probably around October 2020, and I started having night sweats again. And maybe I wanted to look past it or wanted to overlook it and didn't want to really say, "Oh man, maybe I got something going on again." Because I felt so good in all of the other areas, and I looked good in the mirror for the first time in so long. I'm like, man, it can't be that big of a deal. Might just be something else. So I kind of just swept it under the rug, and then went and got a PET scan in 2020, in December of 2020, and that's when um, there was another thing that took a left.
But you're like you just said, you were kind of maybe subconsciously not wanting to acknowledge those because you felt so good, you were doing so much, you had taken control back of your life. When you finally, actually, I want to describe that PET scan because I've gone through this before too, where the people who are doing the scan can't tell you anything. Can you
Yeah,
describe? So you go in for your PET scan, what the
yeah,
atmosphere is like? Yeah.
yeah. So going to for my PET scan, and it wasn't in the hospital. They had a trailer that they were using, a mobile PET scan office that was right outside the hospital. And so the technician, she had a partner with her. She was super sweet, and she's asking me some questions. She's walking me outside into the trailer to get all set up, and you had to make sure you sit still and quiet for a while. But prior to that, they wanted to know, what was my story? Why was I here? You're too young to be here. I can't, if I had $1 for every time someone told me I was too young to be here, to be going through this, I'd be rich. But I explained, and I had told them about my history as a young man, and they're like, "Oh wow, like you look so good. You're a fighter. Everything's gonna be good. We just know it." And I'm like, "Absolutely. I mean, I haven't been in better shape. I'm ecstatic. I'm like, let's do this scan." When I left the scan, that energy wasn't in the room, and I wasn't sure if it was because it was raining, but it was raining when I went in. And so, I just kind of had this feeling, I wonder what they see. And I knew because I've been through so many of these things and, getting cardiac, MRIs or echocardiograms, and I want to ask some questions. They're like, oh, I can't really tell you. And so I don't try to pry too much out of my technicians anymore. Um, and I could just tell that things were different. And they wish me the best, but the face on this lady, the lady's face changed completely. Um, and it was more of like my caring mother or caring motherly friend at this point. And but once again, in denial, just like with the same with the night sweats, I'm like, huh, I'm feeling good. I feel like I'm winning, so I'm going to sweep it under the rug again and keep it moving. And plus, I had really done a lot to ground myself in remaining objective and neutral thinking. In the past, I had done so much um, living in the future and worrying about what am I going to do if this happens, or what am I going to do if they say this, or if my oncologist says I have this. Well, what am I going to think about that? How am I going to? And that to me caused so much anxiety. And so at this point in my life, I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm like, hey, the facts are, I feel good. I just took a PET scan, and that's all I know. And so that's where I left it.
Then you did get the results. It was about a week later when you got a call. What was that like?
So it was actually via because everything is so smart nowadays, like on the phone. Nobody called. I got the results in the palm of my hand on my summary report, and the findings said findings abnormal, 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 and the denial at this point is like, okay, something's definitely off, but I'm not sure what it is. And I also, going back to my old training, I don't want to go Google all of these big words on here and then give myself my death certificate and punch my stamp here today before I even hear from a professional. So I tried to ground myself. I tried to pick up the phone and call, to see if I could get an appointment to review the results with my local oncologist. And then I also called my oncologist at the Mayo Clinic as well to see, because the oncologist at the Mayo Clinic was ultimately the one who had asked me during my last treatment way back at the Mayo, like to get a PET scan the next time I got to the doctor. And so sent the information over and was hoping for a professional opinion, but I knew that it wasn't good with the word abnormal capitalized, multiple times throughout this report.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, that's right. Everything's smart. We're getting a lot of the results for better, for worse. Sometimes it's good to get something right away, not wait for a call. Other times it's like, I don't know what this means. And I'm narrative writing more and it's making me
Yeah.
more anxious.
Hmm.
I need a professional to translate this for me. So you're waiting for that. By the time you get that translation, it's January. So it's the next month.
Hmm.
And your Mayo Clinic oncologist, then he does call you, right? Does he call
Hmm.
you?
Hmm.
Okay. So that's the call. What was that like? What did he say?
Yeah. Yeah, I was at work. I was training a couple of new hires, and I had a telehealth appointment with my Mayo Clinic oncologist, and he said, "Nick, it looks like you've got some type of cancer, and it's spreading, throughout pretty much a good portion of your body. I need you to get up here immediately so that we can do a biopsy and figure out what's going on. We need to figure out if this is your IgG4 resurging, or we need to figure out what is happening here. How soon can you get to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota?" So that at that moment, that's when I knew things were real. And I think probably leading up to that call, I knew that it was only a matter of time before we had to get back into to fight mode. I was just in disbelief. I really, because I had heard lymphoma so many times before, but the pseudo lymphoma, I almost felt like I wasn't. I didn't know. I didn't really fit in a box anywhere. I didn't fit in the cancer survivor group exactly because I didn't have a cancer diagnosis, and there was nobody else in my little interesting case group over here, not too many people. So I was a little bit, I was a little bit scared.